In the bustling heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and neon lights never slept, a boy named Michael Turner was born. His family lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, where broken elevators and flickering hallway lights were part of daily life. His father, a factory worker, often came home with tired eyes and callous hands. His mother worked double shifts as a waitress, balancing trays heavier than her own fragile frame. Money was always tight. Every month, Michael's parents argued in whispers about overdue bills, about rent that seemed to rise faster than their wages. Michael often pretended not to hear, but those arguments carved themselves into his young heart like invisible scars. From an early age, Michael noticed something. His neighborhood was full of people who had accepted defeat. Men sat on street corners, drinking away their afternoons. Teenagers dropped out of school, chasing temporary highs. Success felt like a foreign language, one no one around him had ever learned to speak. But Michael was different. He loved books. In the small public library down the street, he discovered worlds bigger than the Bronx. He read about inventors who failed 1,000 times before changing the world, about leaders who rose from nothing to inspire millions. He didn't just read stories. He absorbed them, lived them. He believed, deep down, that his life didn't have to be defined by the broken elevators or the cracked walls of his building. Still, reality was harsh. At 13, he started working part-time at a corner store to help his parents. He stocked shelves, swept floors, and learned how to smile politely even when customers were rude. His classmates laughed at him for wearing second-hand clothes and shoes with worn-out soles. But every night, when he came home exhausted, he'd open a notebook and write down his dreams. One day, I'll go to college. One day, I'll start a business. One day, I'll make my parents proud. He had no roadmap, no mentor, and no guarantee. All he had was belief, and sometimes that felt like both everything and nothing. By the time Michael entered high school, life had grown heavier. His father's health began to decline due to long shifts at the factory. The bills piled higher than ever, and Michael's part-time job at the corner store became less an option and more a necessity. At school, he often felt invisible. Teachers were overworked, students were distracted, and guidance counselors had little time for kids from his side of town. Yet Michael had something many of his classmates lacked, an unshakable desire to break free. One evening, as he walked home from school, he noticed a group of his old friends hanging out near the basketball court. They waved him over, offering him a cigarette and jokes about skipping homework. Michael hesitated. He remembered how close he had once been to them, but then he looked at their tired eyes, their restless laughter, and felt a cold truth. If he stayed in that circle, he'd become just another name lost in the streets. That night, he made a decision. He would distance himself from people who drained his energy, no matter how lonely the road felt. Michael's English teacher, Mrs. Anderson, was the first to notice something special about him. One day, she asked the class to write an essay about their future. While many scribbled half-hearted paragraphs, Michael poured his heart into his paper. He wrote about wanting to become an entrepreneur, to build something from nothing, to change the lives of his family and community. When Mrs. Anderson returned the essays, she stopped at his desk, placed the paper face up, and said, "Michael, you have a gift. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise." It was the first time someone outside his family had expressed genuine belief in him. That sentence echoed in his head for weeks, fueling his determination. High school wasn't easy. Michael worked nights and weekends, and some mornings he showed up to class with bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep. Still, he forced himself to study. He joined the debate team. Even though his shoes were old and his shirt was wrinkled, he spoke with passion, and soon people started to notice him, not for what he wore, but for what he believed. But challenges grew sharper. His father lost his job after the factory downsized. The Turner's fridge often sat half empty. Michael had to pick up extra shifts, sometimes skipping meals to make sure his younger sister ate. One rainy evening, as he carried groceries home, Michael stopped under a flickering streetlight and whispered to himself, "I can't give up. Not now. Not ever. If I break, everything breaks."